Homeschooling high school tends to scare most people, even homeschoolers like you. I, from the beginning, kind of had to figure things out. When we first started, obviously my kids were younger, but as they started to get older, I was like, I've got to figure things out on their own until God brought some people into my life that had older homeschoolers. And it can be really hard if you are a homeschool with young kids and as they're starting to get towards middle school and you're starting to get worried about high school and you don't have any other resources. I encourage you to pray about it and then just find people. And when you do, ask them lots and lots of questions. Because I'm going to tell you from being on this side of it, writing a transcript for a high schooler is really no big deal. It's actually should be the least of your worries. And with what I'm going to share with you today, it should not even be a concern at all. Follow the steps that I'm going to give you in just a moment, and you will be fully prepared to write a transcript for your homeschool high schooler. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where we talk anything and everything homeschool and all that encompasses the homeschool lifestyle. I'm your host, Leigh Nguyen. I'm a mom who never intended to homeschool, and suddenly I am here, 14 years later, with 2 homeschool graduates and 1 more to go. No matter where you are in your homeschool journey, Little by Little Homeschool seeks to empower and encourage you to carry out this amazing calling of home educating and discipling your children. It's not always easy, but I'm here to walk alongside you because I promise that these years are worth all of your effort. Grab that load of laundry that needs folded, settle in at the kitchen sink to wash those dishes, or tie up those walking sneakers, and let's get into today's topic. 1 week ago, in that episode, I told you my dream day for the Monday after the conference, which happened on October 18th. So that Monday, October 20th, my goal is just to do whatever, to sit, maybe read a book, drink some coffee, go for maybe a leisurely walk, and just enjoy the day and not have a to-do list to worry about. But guess what? There were other plans. This is just kind of the life of mom. And so let me tell you, I'm going to give you a little update here. So that week that was going to just be quiet and I was going to just get some things done around the house and just refresh my mind and my body, it turned into a little bit of a slower week. I thought that I had overcome the fact that I tend to get stress within my left back shoulder. And I had been doing really well for a few years. And apparently before the conference, I had put my cortisol was so high, I was in fight or flight. And as the conference went on, that began to subside. And then the pain started to really come up. And what happens is it tends to become inflamed, pinches a nerve that runs down my arm. It kind of can run up my head and give me a headache. So on Monday morning at 7:30 in the morning, I was at the chiropractor for an adjustment. I haven't been there in years, but I was like, it hopefully can't hurt. Then on Tuesday, that was just a rough day of cleaning up and everything. And then on Tuesday, my husband and I took a day trip to go pick up a new to her car for our daughter. She just has so much going on right now that we were like, okay, we will take the day and do that. So it was a 4-hour drive there and a 4-hour drive back. We drove separately then on the way back. But the blessing was I got to get together with some friends. So where we went to go pick it up, we have friends living there. So I was able to have lunch with them. And so that was really wonderful. And then I had one day to get grocery shopping and packed and to get the house and everything all ready because guess what? My wonderful husband surprised me. Now, he told me this before the conference. He was trying to wait until after the conference to tell me, but apparently I was making too many plans for our family and for him and for myself for the weekend after the conference. And he's like, I have to tell you something. So he and I, for the past 5 days, have been out of town and our kids have been doing really well. They're all older. If you have younger kids, you're like, wait, what? They all did really well. I left them plenty of food and kind of wrote out not a schedule for them, but just where each other were and had to be work. And so that they were able to communicate and figure out where each other, so if they came home and nobody was there, they'd be like, oh, they're at work. Anyway, it's just kind of my way of getting it out of my brain and so that I feel better about things. But long story short, he and I, as of you probably listening to this, are back in town. We're back home and we headed to Maine. I have a wonderful, really close friend. We've been friends our entire lives and I haven't seen her, I guess it's probably been about 4 years. So behind the scenes, secretly, he was communicating with her and setting this up. And so he and I were able to get away and spend some time with them, but just spend some time alone, just outside in nature. It was just beautiful. It was wonderful. It was exactly what my shoulder and my entire body and my mind and my heart needed. So just thought I would kind of share that, sometimes the best laid plans, but it was so good. And so now that I'm home, I have a new goal, and I need to get my house and my property ready for winter because I think it's going to be coming here soon. Okay, let's get into today's episode, but I'm going to start with a disclaimer. And sometimes people would think maybe this disclaimer would disqualify me from being able to share how to write a high school transcript for your homeschooler. But I have 3 transcripts for my kids, so therefore I can write a transcript. But my disclaimer, and some people then would say this kind of disqualifies you, is that so far at this point, none of my children have chosen to go to college because none of them have chosen a career path for the time being that requires an associate's or a bachelor's or master's or higher kind of diploma or anything. So we have not pushed them to do that. If you don't need it for what you're going to do, therefore, you don't need to go and do it. You don't need to spend that time and you don't need to spend that money. This could be a whole nother episode. But I know that since my kids have not gone to school, but that's okay. They still have a transcript. But I am going to share with you my experience, what I have learned, a lot through observation and reading, conversations and talking, and just with the own personal experience of my kids. But I'm going to share at the end then some tips for those of you whose kids are serious about college. So stick around to the end for that. So a couple things I want to tell you, like the process that I used. The first was that I had a notebook for each child as they began their high school. Now, let me go back and say that sometimes kids are possibly going to do some type of subjects or some type of curriculum or resources that are going to be a high school level in 8th grade. For example, many kids will begin algebra, and that is actually considered a high school level course. Therefore, you can include that on their transcript. So don't negate things that they might do possibly in 8th grade that actually would be considered a high school course. So I would get them a notebook. So it could possibly be 8th grade, but it may not be till 9th grade. And in that notebook, I would just start there at 9th grade, label 9th grade, and write down every subject that they are doing for this. Now, remember, you have a whole notebook, so you can use plenty of pages for 9th grade. You're going to have plenty of room for all of the 4 years. And so write down the subject that they're doing and all of the resources. Now, some of these subjects might just have one textbook and a workbook. They might be one website they're working on. Or there could be some subjects where they're using a lot of different resources. Write those down. Or maybe there is a textbook that has the bulk of everything, but you use maybe some YouTube channels and some other supplemental resources. You've maybe watched some documentaries. Write those down too as the resources that you have used. Now, for those subjects, you are going to have to list on the transcript a grade. Now, some people say a letter grade, some people say a number grade. I personally would rather have more information than not enough information. So go ahead and write down both. Maybe it is a B and they've got an 85. And how you choose to do those grades is going to be up to you. We're going to leave that a little bit open-ended. You can talk to people that are, we'll say off the record about how to do all of those grading, but write down everything that you use. You will not regret having too much information. And do not think that when they get to 11th or 12th grade that you will remember what they did in 9th or 10th grade, especially if you have multiple children that you are homeschooling, where those multiple children are around the same age, or they're older or they're younger. You're not going to remember. You have so much in your brain. That's why I say use a notebook and write it all down. Therefore, you are not relying upon your memory that is going to forget, and you're not trying to then go back and wasting time. So my goal here was for myself, and now for you too, is not to waste your time when you need to actually write out this transcript, when you actually need to give it to possibly include it with your applications for college or for a job or for whatever it is. Let's keep it simple and write everything down and understand you're going to forget. So don't rely upon your brain and your memory. I also highly recommend writing down activities or clubs or any types of things that they participate in within that notebook. Now, you're not necessarily going to include that in the transcript, but when you apply for a college, they're going to want to know what you were a part of. Maybe you're a part of 4-H, or you're a part of Bible quizzing, or some other club, or a community or service stuff that you did. Write it down in that notebook as well, so that you, again, don't have to try to remember it in a couple of years, because sometimes our kids participate in something or do service projects just for 1 year, and then they don't do it again, and we can very easily forget about those things. And there's room on the application. They want to know about your activities and what you have participated in to see that they are a well-rounded student. The second thing I want to add is that if you have to turn in paperwork to your school district as part of your homeschool regulations, keep all of that with the notebook. It would be a supplemental type of information and a bit of a legal proof that you actually did those different subjects and it was signed off by your school district. I would also recommend keeping their work. They write a research paper. Did they write essays? Their maybe consumable math book or a notebook that they work through for, say, their geometry or algebra 2. Keep all of that. If you have listened to me for a little bit, you know that when I talk about the elementary age, I'm like, once you get the approval from your school district, if you have to do that or whatever it is you have to do at the end of the year, then go ahead, you can toss those things. But I recommend just maybe getting a bin, depending upon maybe how many subjects your kids are doing, or just maybe some of those, a bigger box or something that you can then keep it all in, store it away so that you still have all of that as just extra proof. I think of it as a little bit of an insurance policy. So keep their work. The next thing I want to mention is when you come to the point of writing the transcript, now you can decide. You can keep up with that transcript as you go along, and at the end of 9th grade, you can go ahead and fill it all in. And then again at 10th grade, fill in all the 10th grade, 11th grade, fill it all in, 12th grade, fill it all in. Or you can just keep your notebook and then just write out the transcript when they are fully done with all of their years. When I started off with my first one, I think she has her transcript written out 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. I just had so much fun filling it in at the end of each homeschool year for her. My second, I probably have 9th and 10th grade, and my youngest, I don't necessarily have a transcript filled out, but do you know what? Once I have a transcript form, I can fill it out for him within about probably 15, 20 minutes. So it's really not a big deal. So don't feel like you have to be filling it in as you go along. As long as you have the notebook and all the information about the subjects, the resources, and the grades, you'll be able to fill out a transcript in no time. So where do you get this transcript? Well, you could probably find some resources online that maybe you pay for one, but did you know there's just free ones online? And that's all I simply used, was just Google, just looked up and found images and found some PDFs and was able to download it and print it out. And that's just what I used. So go ahead and just get onto your internet browser and go ahead and search for one that looks like what you would want. I'm sure, again, you could probably pay for more other ones and they would be better. Maybe you might be able to fill them out online as opposed to handwriting them in, but you choose whether you want to find something for free, you want to spend a little bit of money on it. There's probably even resources out there that'll actually compile it for you. Again, it just depends upon your budget and all that you want to put into it. It is totally up to you. Now, before I give you those final tips and things I want to help you kind of round things out. Now, you might be listening to this, you might have young kids. I hope you're still here. Stick around and still listen, because I think it's good to have this information in the back of your mind. But if you are still scared after what I have mentioned right now about homeschooling the high school and getting the transcripts, go and find specific resources that are talking about high school and college. There are authors and former homeschool moms or current homeschool moms who have written books and have written articles and have blogs and podcasts and all kinds of things out there that are specific to high school and college. Find them, listen to them, read them, consume them, and that is what's going to help you. The more information you have, the more confident you'll feel, and therefore you will not be scared about writing these transcripts and all the things that go into homeschooling high school. Now, here are my final tips. I want to mention that, so I don't know if it's been a while since I read the different states. So I don't even know. Maybe I haven't read all of them, but anytime I would work with a mom specific about starting homeschool and going over her homeschool regulations, so I would go through and I would read the homeschool, the code and all that kind of stuff, the not fun stuff. because I wanted to be able to arm her with a lot of great information and the actual facts of it. But I don't know if I've gotten to all of the different states, but I'm pretty sure here that most states, or at least a lot of states, are not going to give your child a diploma. But do not fret. Don't worry about that. I'm in the state of New York. They do not give a diploma because the child has not gone through the state accredited courses. And that's okay. And some families are like, well, I want accredited. And that can be a whole nother rabbit trail there. And in some states, you can do some accredited online resources. You can do some things and they would be accredited and you might be able to get a diploma. You just have to look into your state's homeschool regulations, talk to those around, find out what are your different options for it. But just know that if your child never takes an accredited course, they will still get into college. Colleges love homeschoolers. Now, this is specific about writing a transcript, not necessarily college. Not every kid needs to go on to college. I am a firm believer in that. I think more and more people are starting to recognize that. But it's okay for them not to have a diploma. None of my kids are going to have a diploma, and it's totally fine. And no employers have even asked for it, and life has gone on. So a couple of tips I want to mention is that if you have a child that is, or we'll say a teen, a young adult, they're a young woman or young man, and they are planning on going to college, what they want to do requires them to go to college. Then encourage them to take dual enrollment courses. So in at least 11th and 12th grade, they can take courses online, possibly in person, and you can save money by doing this. And they can also, by doing some dual enrollment, so it could be I would recommend, I could do another whole episode about the dual enrollment. I would recommend looking at the general education courses that they would need for a college and having them do those. Focus on getting them maybe some of their English or some of their history or some of their math classes that they would need in order to go on to college, be able to save some money. But also by doing the dual enrollment, it shows prospective colleges that the young person is able to handle college level courses, because you would include then that transcript from that college. They would want to have an official transcript. So most likely that college that they're doing in dual enrollment would then possibly send it on to the other college or send you maybe an official one. But you would include that along with the high school transcript. And they would say, okay, this is what they did in high school. But look, during their high school, they took some dual enrollment courses and they did really well. So this student can actually handle college courses. Now, I have seen some discussion and some talk about weighted classes, and I'll just be completely honest. I don't quite understand the math and the figuring out of it. If that is a concern for you, again, do some more research, find some resources, ask questions, and then get some answers, and you can then proceed on with that. I did not worry about weighted courses and classes at all for my kids. But if you're concerned about that, I want you to go and find information so that you can then not be concerned about it. That's the goal. And the final tip I want to mention here is I think it's really important for us to know what exactly some colleges would want from our kids when it comes to a transcript, when it comes from just the standpoint of what do they want from a homeschooler. And so if you're worried about this, I would recommend possibly maybe 8th grade, giving a call. Well, first start just looking online and then maybe calling the admissions office and say, look, I have this homeschooler. They are 8th grade and we are possibly looking at attending your college in a couple of years. What do you want to see from homeschoolers, and where do you see maybe homeschoolers kind of struggling, and how can we then prepare our student for being able to have everything they need on the transcript, be able to go through the application process, and then be able to take classes successfully at your school? So take a look at possibly maybe contacting and looking and getting some more information from community colleges, state colleges, maybe private universities, in-state, out-of-state. And so that way we'll give you a bit more of a well-rounded look as far as what the different institutions would like to see from your homeschooler. And then in a couple of years, maybe 10th grade, give them a call back, go back onto online, refresh your memory, take a look, and give a call back and say, hey, I called a couple of years ago. This is what they said. Is that still the case? Is that still what you want to see? Because we would maybe do some college tours the next year in 11th grade. And so maybe at least by 11th grade, be contacting them when you go to these college tours. Go ahead and ask and find out what exactly they want. But hopefully it's just building upon what you already knew from when they're in 8th grade. And simply maybe you're just kind of getting a little bit more details. so that you have everything that you need for the high school transcript for them to go on to college. I hope this was really helpful, and more so, I hope that it has calmed down any nerves and has given you a point to start from, and then you can just kind of leap off of that. And I just want to say overall, it doesn't have to be a big deal to write out the transcript, whether your student is going on to college or not going on to college. It's NBD, no big deal, I promise you. If you are concerned about your homeschool in any way because you've just started, this is your first year, or you're a couple years into it, or maybe you're a handful of years into it and just not being sure of that foundation, I want to encourage you, even if you have a high schooler, to go look at your homeschool blueprints so that you can then build that foundation in order to be really intentional about the different resources and the curriculum and how you spend your time and the courses that you're going to do, as well as just overall, how are you going to prepare your child then for when they're older and step out into the world so that you could be intentional instead of just randomly picking different curriculums. Let's be really intentional about how we do that and how we use our time. And that's where your homeschool blueprint will come alongside and walk you through that. You can get more details at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint. The link is also in the show notes for you. Thank you for joining me here today for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If it was just what you needed to hear, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? And if you would like to connect more, social media links and more are in the show notes just for you. I promise to see you back here real soon.